Hi everyone! If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you've clicked on it because you'd like some help on how to compare in your English exams. This video tutorial is going to focus on how to approach, plan and write the comparison questions for GCSE English Language from AQA and English Literature from OCR. So with the language, it's going to be your paper 2, question 4, section A, and for your literature it's both paper 1 and paper 2, and it's the A questions to do with your poetry and your modern prose. So let's get started. First of all, I know it sounds obvious, but you're going to actually have to read the question and find out what the question actually wants you to do. So in this case, we need to have a look at what you're being asked to focus on. So the following question comes from an AQA paper 2 language paper, question 4. So for this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. So you're being asked to compare how the writers convey Amber and the Watercress Girl. So Amber is the focus child in text A, in source A, and the Watercress Girl is the focus child in source B. You're being asked to compare how the writers convey the girls' different experiences of childhood. So, key trigger words are compare, writers convey, and the differences between them. In this case, it's the experiences. So, you're being asked to compare. So, comparison is as simple as how are they similar and how are they different? My top tip for this is to look for the similarities first and then the differences. So plan your similarities, read both texts, find how they're both similar, and then consider how the representations are different. In terms of writers convey, which language and structural devices do they use to convey, show the reader the focus of the text? In this case, which devices do the writers use to convey Amber and the Watercress Girls' experiences of childhood? Top tip, look for a forest features first and then more literary devices such as simile, metaphor and personification. As these texts tend to be non-fiction, it's more likely your forest features are going to crop up first. And in terms of focus, in this case, as we said, it's the different experiences of childhood. Identify the key focus of the question. Again, different experiences of childhood. Again, my top tip is look for what the question's asking first and find explicit details and then have a look at what they imply later on and how they relate to the contextual element. So again, in this question, it's experiences of childhood. You're looking for factual information that shows the experiences and then link it to the contextual ideas surrounding childhood. The next bit, so when you've done that and you've focused on what the question's actually asking you to do, have a look at the bullet points. The bullet points are there to give you a guide to structure your answer. So in this case, identify sets of quotations that link to the focus of the suggested ideas. Obviously, we're being asked to compare the different experiences of childhood, but look at the perspectives. What are the perspectives? How do the children view their own childhood? How does the writer view their childhood? Compare the writer's how the methods the writers use explore those different experiences, and obviously, well, I say obviously, it should be obvious, references to the text, quotations. You must include quotations in your answer. So perspectives, first of all. Perspectives. How do the writers present the focus of the text? What evidence can you find of that focus? So again, experiences of childhood. What does the writer present that links to childhood? Again, think of that contextualization. Childhood is about playing, is about dressing up, is about toys and games, various different things. Again, look for those similarities first and then the differences, and don't forget to contextualize in terms of the focus of the question. Next, methods, language and structure. Your AO2 focus for this, your assessment focus 2, is analysing how the writer uses language and structure to present their ideas. Don't just rely on your ability to find the forest features. Look at things to do with tone, how the writers progress their ideas from the beginning to the end of the text. While you're explicitly marked on this in paper 1 for language, it will greatly bolster your marks and the credit you're given for your interpretations if you do this for paper 2. And again, look for those aphorist features first and the non-fiction features first, and then devices such as simile, metaphor, personification, etc. Your more literary devices, your more expressive devices. And references, as I said before, quotations. Now, on the mark scheme, it explicitly says references to subject terminology. You must include subject terminology in your responses. If you don't, you are throwing away marks, and that would be a massive shame, especially if it gets to the stage where you are only 2 or 3 marks away from what you need. That could have been gotten through your references to subject terminology. Okay, so we've got the question, we've picked the question apart, we know what we're looking at, now let's have a go. So here is the text that we're going to be, the texts even that we're going to be using. Living Dolls Inside the World of Child Beauty Pageants, so that is Amber, and The Watercress Girl from London Labour and the London Poor by Henry Mayhew, 1812 to 1887. It's worth noting now, obviously you've had some experience with the non-fiction text, but it's worth noting that one of them is always going to be pre-20th century. Usually source B, could be source A, they may throw it in there just to throw you off, but it always has an element of pre-20th century. And that's to test your ability to infer and get to grips with different types of language. So, next top tip, when you're looking at the text and when you're determining what quotations, what the focuses are going to be, I would highly recommend colour coding your planning. 3 different colours, 3 different focuses. You only have an hour and 45 minutes to answer the entire paper. Make sure you're focusing on what you need to focus on. So, in this case, for the 2 texts, having already read them, again, these resources are available on Show My Homework for Middleton Tech Kids. I'll put a link in the description to email me, and if you'd like the resources, I can send those to you. So, for these 2 texts, I think we're going to look for things, obviously, well, I don't think, we are going to look for things to do with childhood. So, looking at the 2 texts, we're going to look at, first of all, we're going to look at pastimes, in terms of childhood pastimes. Okay? Next, as we ascertained before, looking at childhood, let's have a look at their actual dress. So how these girls are dressed. Now, pastimes and dress, before we go on to our 3rd and final focus, are really significant things to look at for anything. Anything to do with people, look at what they say they spend time doing. Look at how they're dressed, because contextually, it helps us develop interpretations for the simple fact, contextual information. You can tell a lot about a person's class, a person's social status, etc., by the things they spend their time doing. And also, in terms of the way that they dress, the clothes that they wear, the quality of the clothes, etc. Finally, in terms of childhood, let's have a look at their childhood responsibilities. Now, I know I've switched from caps to lowercase, so please bear with me there. So in terms of responsibilities, childhood is all about learning. And children often don't have very many responsibilities for the simple fact they're children. They should be learning. They should be learning how to play, learning how to interact with others. However, children do have to learn certain responsibilities as they grow up. Now, in terms of source A, linking to this, Amber, if you read line 4, is 7 years old. And the Watercress Girl, if we look on line... I've lost it. If you look for the information in the text, it tells us that she's 8. So their ages are very, very similar, which implies, potentially, their pastimes, their dress, their responsibilities should be very, very similar. Okay, what I'd like to do now is I'd like you to pause the video here, and I want you to go through, I want you to have a look and see what quotations you can find in terms of pastimes, dress, and responsibilities. Remember, look for those aphorist features. Look for the similarities first, and then we'll focus on the differences. Okay? Okay, welcome back. So, first and foremost, found her age. She's 8. There and there. I knew I'd find it eventually. So, if you look at what you've done compared to what I've managed to find, your answers may be similar, they may be different. However, as long as you focused on these key focal points of pastimes, dress, and responsibilities, or in whichever case your 3 focuses to do with the focus of the question, which in our case is experiences of childhood, okay? As long as you focused, let's spell it correctly, as long as you focused on these things, you'll be absolutely fine. As long as you stay focused on the focus of the question, lots of focuses going on, as long as you focus on the focus of the question, you cannot go wrong. So, I found my quotations, and I have sets of quotations. Please, please, please do not rely on simply pairing up quotations. Find a variety of different examples, different sets of quotations, because that will give you more room to analyse. Don't limit yourself on literally 3 quotes from source A and 3 quotes from source B. Please, please, please give yourself enough to talk about. So, we've looked at the question, we've established what the question is asking us to do, we've found our evidence, now we need to get writing. So, this is how I suggest you structure your responses. Now, if I can just draw your attention first of all to the actual comparison element. This is how I suggest you compare. Now, little typo with second text and text 1, but you'll get the point. So, you always, always, always start off with the similarity. Now, the similarity can be as simple as both texts focus on this particular thing, or both texts present this particular thing. If they're similar and they present them in similar ways, fantastic. Say that. Both texts present childhood in source A, childhood in similar ways, or childhood experience in similar ways. In source A, it's this with Amber. Very similarly, in source B, it's this. In our case, this isn't the case. However, we can say that both texts present the pastimes of these children, the dress of these children, etc., and how that links into their experiences of childhood. So we always start with the similarity. Then you talk about text 1. Now, please make sure you're naming the text. In our case, for this example, it's text A, it's source A, which is fine. Please reference the fact that it's an article, because that will also give you extra marks in terms of recognising for. Talk about text A, source A, text 1, whichever it is, and how the evidence implies what you're focusing on. And this, in a later video, I'll go through how to analyse language and structure separately in general. However, this is your analysis structure. Those students from Middle Tech watching this, my students especially, will be familiar with this. If not, this is an almost foolproof way to express your ideas. So the writer uses this particular device. This is what it shows me, or this is what it implies. This is how the evidence supports the question. This is why it's significant. Now, this bit is the golden ticket. This bit is the bit that's going to get you the marks. Okay? Your significance. You've got to tell me why things are significant. And if you can further your significance into the development of perceptive ideas for your level 6 on literature and your level 4 on language, linked to context, implied stereotypes, gender, roles, etc., that will get you extra marks. Then finally, then next even, once you've talked about your quotations, your sets of quotations from source A, from text 1, make a comparison comment. So, however, moreover, the writer in source B, text B, inspector calls, whatever it is, presents the focus, so experience of childhood, in a similar or different way to source A, as, because. Explain why. Don't just say it's different. Give a specific reason. Again, the more you can justify yourself, the more you can explain yourself, the more marks you'll get. And then talk about text 2, text B, source B, whatever it is, in a very similar way to the way you've explored source A, using this checklist. Now, the only difference being, I want you to refer back to the first text. So for example, source B, the writer uses this, quotation implies it's significant. This is similar to source A because. Link back round to a similarity, or this is different, link back to a difference. Again, if you can cross-compare your ideas, that shows a whole understanding of the text, and you're synthesizing, you're comparing, you're bringing lots of different ideas and elements together. And a bonus, if you can say why it's significant that they're different, all the better, and you'll get some extra marks for that. So, all that's left to do now is have a go. Okay, so what I think we're going to focus on is, I think I'm going to go slightly off what we've been planning. I think we're going to look at their personalities and how those have been affected by their childhood experiences. So the quotations that I'm going to focus on are, just cover my little model up for you. Quotations I'm going to be focusing on are a confident little girl with an array of enthusiasm and interests for source A, and for source B, had lost all childish ways, indeed, thoughts and manner, a woman. Now, if you'd like to have a go at this, and linking into the personality affected by childhood experiences, pause this video now, give yourself around 10 to 15 minutes, have a good go at this, and then come back and see how I get on. Otherwise, if you like to see how I do it first, live model it, and then want to have a go one of your own after that, feel free to do that. Both are extremely valuable to do. However, using those quotations, I'm going to write an analysis or a comparison. So, those at Middleton Tech are familiar with hedging phrases. Hedging phrases are a wonderful way to introduce your thoughts, introduce your ideas, and show that critical style. So, I'm going to start with, I'm going to tilt the paper slightly. So my hedging phrase, one might say that. So I'm going to be focusing on the personalities. So if we're looking at the checklist, we're going to start with a similarity. So one might say that both sources present the personalities of the children in different ways. As, now linked to the question, they have been affected by their different experiences of childhood. So if we just have a quick look in terms of our sentence starters and whatnot. So one might say that both sources present, one might say both sources present. There's the focus. Now, I've given a similarity. They both present the children in started off with a difference, different ways, obvious because they're different texts, different time periods. However, they've both been affected by their different childhood experiences. So there's your link to the question, and again, your development of the focus of the question, as well as your development of a comparison, a similarity in this case. So both have been affected by different experiences. But obviously we're focusing on the personalities, so we're focusing on the same thing, but saying how they're different across the text. So in source A, So in source A, the writer of the article uses, now this is where my analysis structure is going to come in. So I'll try and, in fact, yeah, try and leave that there so you can see that. So the writer of the article uses the adjective, so there's my name device, please, please, please use your subject terminology. Use the adjective confident. Don't forget your quotation marks, please. I use singles, feel free to use doubles. Use the adjective confident to describe, so here's my device, this is what the evidence shows, this is how the writer uses it, uses that particular device. To describe Amber's personality as a result of her having, quote, an array of enthusiasms, and interests. Now, notice, and this is really, really key, I've used two quotations to make one point. I've focused my analysis and my subject terminology on one particular part of a quotation, but I've embedded another quotation to help support my idea. Embedding quotations is a brilliant skill and is an absolutely vital skill to prop yourself up into that top level 3, that level 4 band on the mark scheme. So, I've used my name device, I've said what the evidence shows us. Now let's go into the how and the why. So, the how, looking at to what this quotation actually, how this quotation even supports the idea in the question. So this implies that her childhood experience are what we would expect. Experiences are what we would expect for a young girl, again, a young girl of, quote, 7 years old. Just pause there for a second. Might seem trivial, the fact that she's 7 years old might seem trivial, but if it says it in the text, quote it. Because if you quote it, you will get credit for using an array of evidence. Okay, so what we expect of for a young girl aged 7 years old, as children of that age, this is why it's significant, as children of that age are often interested in a wide variety of things. Now, again, linking in, things, not thugs, linking in again to our quotation. Now, our secondary quotation, our embedded quotation, array of enthusiasm and interests, an array means a variety, okay? So, a variety of things, including, and again, this is where we can quote again, we can use some extra information. So, including pop stars, open my brackets, JLS, her favourite band, use that quotation, it's valuable information, and collections. So, in this case, a series of rust-coloured, please ensure you spelling coupled with a U, rust-coloured stones. Again, evidence from the text. So, let's quickly look through. I've got my name device, my adjective. I've got what the evidence implies. So she's confident as a result of array of enthusiasms. I've said that the reason she's confident is because she has this array of enthusiasms. So this implies that child experience what we would expect because, again, children that do a lot of things, that are interested in a lot of things, tend to be more confident. Now, we've got the how, a little bit of significance, but let's extend this and let's make it as best as it can, as good as it possibly can be. So, this is significant as the writer implies, always focus back to the writer. So as the writer implies, Amber's childhood to be it's okay to make mistakes. Childhood to be happy and average. To be happy and, again, let's quote it, average. Why? Here's why. She is having the opportunity, having the opportunity to be a normal 7-year-old, a 7-year-old. Okay, now, looks like a lot. I've got rather large handwriting. I've done just over half a page, but that's the level of detail you need to go into when you're analysing. So we've got our focus because we've mentioned childhood experiences as our focus. We've linked in to what childhood actually implies. So we've done a little bit of contextual analysis. We've done a little bit of contextual interpretation. So again, this is what it is to be a child, to have these different experiences, to have fun, to have collections, to like boy bands and pop stars and various other things. That's what it is to be a child. So we've fully justified this response. Next step, comparison comment. So let's have a look at source B now, but let's introduce it. So your comparison comment. So however, obviously we're going to be focusing on a difference. So however, the watercress girl, in source B is presented differently. Now, a lot of my students will stop there and then go into an analysis. However, another lot of my students will also, because I constantly bang on about it, and some of my students will now say, why? How is she specifically different? Again, that's where the marks come from. Be specific, link it to the question. So, in source B is presented differently as because of her childhood experiences, she is expected, she being the watercress girl, is expected to act more like an adult in order to support her family. Now, straight in with that, why significance and the development of that perception, that contextual idea, because as we'll go on to say in a second, at this time, children in the 1800s, children, as soon as they were old enough to work properly, they were sent to work in order to support their families. That's key contextual advice. That's key contextual content, which is something I'm going another video coming up reasonably soon in terms of how to recognise and how to look for contextual perceptive interpretations. Now, we've done our, so let's just backtrack slightly. Got our similarity, talked about text 1, source A in this case, made our comparison comment. Finally, let's analyse that second source. So, in source B, Mayhew. Now, another top tip, use the author's surname. Wherever possible, there isn't an author attached to the Amber article, but use the author's surname. Don't use the first name, because there are tens of thousands of Daves and Janes, etc. Not so many of the surnames to differentiate between them. So please do use the author's surname, Mayhew uses, now if we're following this, let's focus on a device, so uses the verb phrase, lost all childish ways, to describe the Watercress girl's personality. Now, linked back into my secondary focus, main focus of this question being obviously childhood experiences, but linking into my identified secondary focus of personality. Okay, so describe the Watercress girl's personality to be entirely different to Amber's. Now, here's where the cross comparison element comes in. Here's where the linking back comes in. So, different to Amber's, as, don't forget that justification, she has had an entirely different childhood. States the obvious slightly, but it's important. So, entirely different childhood. Now, let's get a bit more in depth with this. So, lost all childish ways. So, as a result of the expectations, remember we mentioned them up here, expectations, her family have placed upon her from a young age, let's get a little bit more paper. Okay, so as a result of the expectations her family have placed upon her from a young age, as, quote, 8 years of age, again, it says it in the text, if it's relevant, use their words rather than yours when explaining things. Okay? As 8 years of age, now, little bit of extra information, I had to take care of a baby for my aunt. Lost implies that she started life as a normal little girl with enthusiasms and interests. Just pause for a second there. Interests. So again, linking back that cross comparison, using a quotation from source A, enthusiasms and interests, using that quotation in here to help justify my point. So, interests, just like Amber, let's make it explicit. Just like Amber. Okay, so just like Amber. Now, however, now they are obviously different because they were set in different time periods. Due to her implied poverty, another quote to help out, pale with privation. Okay, again, any point that I make, if you can find a quotation from the text to help support it, use it. Pale with privation, the Watercress girl has lost these childhood experiences, just like Amber, leaked childhood experiences that Amber experiences in order to help support her family by selling watercress. And acting, as implied by the fact that she was looking after her aunt's child, and acting, quote, in thoughts and manner, a woman. Cool. So, we've got our name device, we've got what the evidence shows, we've got how the evidence implies and supports our idea from the question. We've extended quite significantly. Now let's get that significance in there. So, this is significant. As the writer implies, the Watercress Girls' childhood to be basically non-existent. To be non-existent. Let's spell existent correctly. Non-existent, which, creating sympathy, for her from the reader, especially, let's exemplify, especially when compared with the comparative luxury normal children like Amber experience. Just realised I got a bit carried away there. So, let's have another look. So name my device, perfect. What it shows, why it's significant, and again, linking into that contextual stereotyping ideas of, the fact is, she lives in poverty at that time. Probably, to improve this, I probably could have put in about the 1800s, but that implied context of the text suggests that she doesn't live a normal child's life. Her childhood experiences aren't what we feel they should be as a 21st century audience, but they aren't normal childhood experiences because of her situation. And that links back into her personality as well. So, there's my response. And again, you'll notice it's about a page and a half for one comparison. That's roughly what you should be aiming for, roughly a page and a half per comparison. And you need to be doing at least, I would say, 3 of these. Okay? So, final thought, final ideas for you. In terms of our checklist, in terms of what you should be following, that is your comparison structure. Zoom out so you can potentially take a screenshot of this or a picture of it if you wish to. Let's keep up. Again, resources are available on Show My Homework for Middleton Tech students. And again, I'll leave my email address in the comments so you can email me if you wish to get the resources. So, you have your comparison checklist. Start with the similarity. Both texts show this, present this. Talk about text 1 using the analysis structure. Make a comparison comment, so are they similar, are they different, and why? And then talk about your second text there. Now, final thought. If you're doing AQA like we are, for language, if you're doing OCR, and AQA again, even if you're doing that for lit, these are specific examples from our exam boards. However, in general, comparison questions will ask you to compare how. Now, all comparisons that you're asked to do will ask you to compare how. That's how writers present their ideas. Therefore, there is no difference in how you compare, you're still going to focus on language, you're still going to focus on structure, you're still going to focus on how writers present their ideas. Again, it's just the text that you have in front of you that are different. So, if this has been helpful to you, I'm really, really glad.